In the Bible, a scapegoat is one of two kid goats. As a pair, one goat was sacrificed, not the scapegoat, and the living scapegoat was released into the wilderness, taking with it all sins and impurities. Leviticus 16:21. He is to lay both hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites, all their sins, and put them on the goat's head. He shall send the goat away into the wilderness in care of someone appointed for the task. John 1:29. John sees Jesus coming to him and says, "Behold the Lamb of God, taking away the sin of the world." He is the one, he is concerning whom I said, "After me comes a man who improsten over me has, because before me he was." 1 Samuel 20:41. After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times, with his face to the ground. They kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. The LXX, or the 70, was a popular Greek translation of the Old Testament that was available during the time that John wrote John's Gospel. Ellicott's commentary for English readers claims that the was LXX was unintelligible. However, that is not the case. The words "until the great consummation" are clear, just not necessarily fit for children. Consummation means the action of making a marriage or relationship complete by having sexual intercourse. So when in John 1:30 it says, "He it is concerning whom I said, After me comes a man who precedence over me has, because before me he was." This is not a repeat of John 1:15. Instead, it is John acting to lay both hands on the head of the scapegoat and confessing over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites, all their sins, and put them on the goat's head. He then sends the goat away into the wilderness in the care of someone appointed for the task. Specifically, John was with 2 of his disciples, and those 2 disciples followed Jesus. One of those men is mentioned by name, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, and it would make sense to conjecture that the other man present was the author of this text. However, I don't think the author of the text is finished laying both hands on the head of the live goat and confessing over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites. First, the disciples ask Jesus, "Where are you staying?" And he says, "Come and you will see." But John does not say where he was staying, leaving the reader to guess. A bit later, Jesus is introduced to Simon, and Jesus, upon meeting him, immediately decides that he shall be called Cephas. Now, religious scholars disagree on whether calling calling Simon Cephas was an insult or a compliment. Some people point out that Cephas is a large stone, and it's the feminine word is a feminine word for stone in Greek, and it's possible that someone may have been insulted by being called Cephas for out of nowhere. This appears in another context in Matthew. In Matthew, Jesus calls John Petros in a situation where John had just credited Jesus with being the Messiah. In John's Gospel, he calls him Cephas, which is the Greek word. Um, and John says, which means Peter, which is not exactly true because the languages are not the same. Anyway, the question is it name calling or is it not name calling? What happens in Matthew 16:18? Jesus says to Simon, I also now say to I also now to you say that you are Peter. You are the rock. Petros was in the language that they were speaking. It wasn't a nickname. He was just saying, you are the rock. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. But in John 1:42, Jesus used a word that was outside their language. He used the word Cephas, and then acknowledged that that means Petros. The next thing Jesus does, after a little bit of name calling, he finds Nathanael. Now, Nathanael is either a cynical or sarcastic man. He says, Nazareth, can anything good come from there? That is something that is cynical or sarcastic. Of course, something good can come from Nazareth. But when Jesus sees Nathanael approaching, he said of him, here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. Now the trouble is, we've already shown, just from the first thing that Nathanael said, he demonstrates himself to be sarcastic or cynical. If he's being sarcastic, we know that is deceit. If he is being cynical, it means that Jesus is saying nothing good can come from Israel, from Nazareth. And if nothing good can come from Nazareth, then Jesus is not good. But Nathanael, knowing full well he is a sarcastic and cynical person, says, how do you know me? And Jesus gives a completely non-impressive answer. I saw you while you were still under the fig tree and before Philip called you. But it's honest. Nathanael replies, again sarcastically, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Answered Jesus and said to him, because I said to you that I saw you under the fig tree, believe you? Greater things than these you will see. So already, Jesus is doubting Nathanael. He thinks it's absurd that Nathanael believes simply because he saw him under the fig tree. So when Jesus said, here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit, we already see that Jesus doesn't believe what he just said. But he does say you will see greater things than that. Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. And that's a literal translation. And he says to him, truly, truly, I say to all of you, you will see the heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. This reminds me a bit of the quote from Heraclitus, the way up and the way down are one and the same. Because here in John's Gospel, Jesus does not point the way upward towards heaven in a clear fashion. Rather, angels can ascend on the way up, and they can descend on the way down. The way is the same. Does that mean that there is no distinction between ascending and descending? No. But it means when reading the gospel of the scapegoat, we need to take special care to recognize where where things are ascending and where things are descending.